Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laurie McIsaac, Director of Operations with RTO9. I'm going to give everyone a minute or so more just to get those that are jumping in last minute to give them the opportunity to jump on board, and then we'll get started. Okay, so in the interest of time, we'll get moving along. Thanks once again for joining us for today's webinar, Reputation Management During Crisis. Before we begin, I just want to cover off a few housekeeping issues if I can. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on our industry website, tourismtalk.ca. Please feel free to revisit the content yourself and share it with colleagues. We also invite your comments and questions, so please look to the QA chat box on the right side of your screen in the control panel. If you think of a question for our speaker at any point, please type it in there and I will table it on your behalf. Following today's webinar, you will receive a brief survey in your inbox. We kindly ask that you provide us with your feedback. All right, Southeastern Ontario continues to move through the reopening phase. We're all more than a little nervous about venturing out into public spaces. The tourism industry has been hit particularly hard, and many operators are unsure how to navigate this phase to ensure their staff, suppliers, and customers remain safe. It can be a real challenge to communicate and enforce new policies and procedures, even those that are mandated by local or provincial health offices. And how you manage this can affect your business reputation. To help offer sage guidance through this, RTO9 is pleased to partner with Deirdre Campbell, whom you see on your screen, Managing Director of Beattie Tartan Integrated Communications, one of Canada's leading PR firms. Deirdre, I'm going to hand things over to you to fill us in on Beattie Tartan and some of the work that you have been engaged in.
Great, thank you so much. And first of all, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know what it's like to have to do another one of these. We call them, I know this is not Zoom, but we're zoomed out these days. It is a real honor to be here today because many of you are, all of you actually are in one of the most beautiful parts of Canada. And to just give you a little bit about my background. So typically this type of session would be a full day session. So I'm putting lots of information in front of you. Don't hesitate to reach out to Laurie and to myself with questions following the session. Right now, I've been really busy working on something called a Tourism Resiliency Network, and it's something that was put together in BC actually to support the different experiences and accommodation providers to start getting back into business and to help them with crisis and comms. So I've got quite a few examples that I'm going to put forward to you that I've been learning as questions and concerns people have. I also represent Destination Canada, and what we are working with Destination Canada is on that recovery strategy. And the good news is that it's coming forward. It's very much being put into the hands of the regions themselves. You guys know best. Your RDMOs know best on how to bring visitors back in a safe and trusted way. And we're here to help tell your stories in as broadly as possible. Something that will not only help to drive domestic tourism, but also to go out to our international markets when we're ready to welcome them back to Canada. We also do a lot with Indigenous tourism as well. So we have our company has a broad range. We have clients across Canada. We also have offices across Canada. So please feel free to keep tapping into us as a resource. We are big fans of RTO9 and TAIO and all the groups that are doing really amazing work in your area. So I've been starting all of these presentations that I've been doing around trust and why it is so important, because everything we're doing right now, as you can imagine, is we're building, and in some cases, when it comes to workforce and attracting people back to tourism, we're rebuilding trust. As Beattie Tartan, we have been very lucky to work with the Gustafson School of Business at the University of Victoria, who decided 5 years ago to actually really look at how consumers use trust when making a decision, how they measure trust, and what causes them to make that purchase decision and favoring one company over another. And they do quite a large survey across Canada, and this year they did one, and as you can imagine, they did it in January, and the results came back in March, and they actually went back to the table and redid a smaller survey just to see what the effects of COVID were on some of these, and I'll touch a little bit on that. But the biggest thing for what I wanted to know when it comes to communications and building your reputation is to look and understand how the various areas of trust that consumers look at. So that's what this slide is showing you. You know, obviously it's your perception. When it comes to tourism, it's are they going to deliver what they promised? I mean, there's assumption that if I book at a hotel or a B&B that it's going to be clean, that they're going to have comfortable beds, that it's going to be, I'm going to be welcomed and safe. There's that expectation that you're going to talk to me before I come and after I leave, that relationship trust, that you're going to connect with me perhaps on social media, that hopefully you're going to keep in touch with me after you visit you. So that relationship trust, we see that in loyalty programs that are happening. That's really important. But as we started measuring trust and certain brands rose to the top, those that were consistently at the top, that people said they trusted the most, there was one area that others fell short on, and that was actually talking about what they stood for. It's that values-based trust that you see in the corner, and that is something that a lot of companies, even though they may be doing a lot of good work in the community, they may have an exceptional employee program, they really stand for sustainability. They are, you know, really good about authenticity. They may not be talking about it in a way that was resonating with consumers. So that was something that you'll see as we go through this when we talk about communications and reputation management. I'm going to touch on that a little bit more. But that whole Gustafson Brand Trust Index, and here's some more information over the years, what we've been seeing, some of the changes, is that, you know, more and more you need to be aware of how people are starting to look at brands through a different lens. We've seen that through Tim Hortons and how it started in the first year as one of the top brands in Canada. And through some small mistakes, big mistakes, some may say, it actually lost trust and fell down. And that. So when it comes to tourism, the tourism industry as a whole has not done really well when it comes to being a trusted industry. A lot of that was because if you think back over the couple of years, there's been quite a few big brands that have gone bankrupt. You often would hear about people being stranded in some exotic location and couldn't get back. But yet there were some consistent brands that rose to the top. And again, these are big brands, they tended to be. So Fairmont usually was in the top 10. Marriott was in the top 10 often. WestJet did very well until about a year ago, and then they sort of fell down and there was some internal issues. So it became very clear to us when we talk about communications and reputation management that even though companies could make mistakes, but it was how they reacted to those mistakes that enabled them to keep that brand trust alive or not. And that's something to keep thinking about going forward, because we're going into, and I hate to use this uncharted territory, but we really are going into that area. Just for out of curiosity, since I've been talking about it, this was this year's ranking. Now this was separate from the COVID rankings, which you can go to the Gustafson Brand Trust. I'll give you a link to that, but if you just Google Gustafson Brand Trust Index, it'll come up. But these are consistently what are some of the top brands are in Canada, and you can sort of look at them and decide you agree or you disagree. I will say that Mountain Equipment Co-op over the years has consistently, and CAA have been consistently on the top brands, and they have a really strong connection to their clients because they're membership driven, so very good at relationship trust, but also very good about talking about their values. So I won't dwell too much on this, but at least it gives you a frame of reference of where I'm coming from when I start going through how important it is to start talking about what you stand for and what your beliefs are, your purpose in being a passionate tourism operator. And during this time in particular, during a crisis. I did quite a lot of work with the regions around the wildfires in the past few years, as we were both after the wildfires happened when we were starting to recover, and also before, hopefully in preparation should they happen again last year. So what we talked about is that you really want to stay on point when you're communicating. You want to be consistent in your messaging. You're going to hear me repeat this throughout the session today. This is about collaboration as an industry and a region. This is what we call, it's not about being competitive. It's actually about showing that as a region, you're lifting each other up, you're sharing best practices. And it's not a time to sell, it's a time to actually provide useful information, what people should expect. I've looked on some of your websites and some of you are doing it really, really well. You're managing people's expectations, but helping them to understand what an experience is going to be like now during this COVID time. Some people, when it first hit, I was hearing that they wanted to just kind of go quiet. They didn't really want to communicate because they didn't know what they could communicate. And that's an honest reaction. But I would say, please do the opposite. Even to say, we don't know what the answers are yet right now, but we're looking for them, because you want to engage with your clients, your guests, your stakeholders, your industry more than ever. Especially your workforce, they're going to want to know what's happening as well. And it's really important that you do keep that communications lines open. Can't speculate. Don't be afraid to talk about, what the negative impact. This was particularly true in the early stages when a lot of people, clients, small operators were having to shut down and not open their doors. And guests who maybe had bookings were scared and didn't know what to do. And so there was a tendency to not want to respond until they knew more. But remembering that trust circle that I showed you, that relationship building was key. So even to talk to them and reach out to them and saying, we're still waiting for information and we still want to keep engaging with you was really, really important. And that's why your trusted resources are so important that we have. We're so lucky with the tourism industry, with Tayo, with others that are doing all this amazing good work of providing resources for us, because that's where you want to point yourselves to, but also use that information when you're communicating back to your guests and your employees. And that's when you become a trusted voice, because you're putting that information forward. We often talk about this in just general communications and positive PR, is you kind of want to out-help the competition. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure that you become that resource that people know they can go to get the latest updates. What's happening in Ontario? What's happening to Southeastern Ontario? What's open? What's new with the border crossing? That information, even though you may not necessarily have it on your own website, that you point to links where people can get that information. I'd be interested to hear from you whether or not you're seeing what we're seeing out west, where we're still getting a lot of American or US visitors trying to book and come in July and August. So again, not fully aware of the restrictions that are in place. There was a story last week about someone trying to check into Vancouver from Seattle. So just make sure that that information is up to date. So during the response phase, which was again about 2 months ago, or some people were may say even shorter, it sort of changes as you know across the country. Again, that communication, check in with people, be available to answer questions, find the information. It's going to be critical for you to hear what those concerns are, because then you can address them. And what we often find when there's a vacuum of information, when there's no information, that's when people make things up. And they fill it. There's a constant need to speculate and fill with, and that's when misinformation gets shared. So even letting people know that you don't have that information right now, if someone's calling to book with you and asking a question that you don't know, it's okay to say that and point them in the direction of where they can get that information. The other thing we found during this response, and I'm sure others will agree, was how little people understood how the tourism industry worked. They didn't understand the distribution channels and the supply chains, and they particularly came true when we were looking at some of the stimulus packages that were being offered, where they didn't understand the seasonality. And this was astonishing in some cases, but it also reminded us it was a great opportunity that this was the time to educate people. Now more than ever, I think people truly understand the impact, the positive impact tourism can have in communities, and that there was this is when we need to educate them on what's needed and how our industry works and why it's such an important economic generator for us. So that was really, that's been very interesting for us, and we're not taking our foot off the pedal at all. We're continuing to educate and tell the powers that be, the people that in government, that this is what's working and what isn't. And here's how we're going to move forward for the long term. And we'll talk about resiliency in a minute. Again, as we see in other places not doing so well, we need to lead with science and our health and industry experts. That's the information that we're leading. And the fact that we're trusting them, as I say to a lot of my clients, first mover is not an advantage here. People want to see that you are taking your time and you're not rushing into anything. As someone said, after 9/11, it was all about security. And even though we complained about having to line up at the airport or have that extra security measures, we didn't really resent them as we might have years ago before 9/11. Post-COVID, it's about health and safety. It's about ensuring that people are going to have an experience that keeps them safe from catching COVID. So in this recovery stage that we're going in, we are talking about, absolutely, this is the time you can start providing those stories and images for inspiration. Talk about what your new experience is like. I've seen some of you do it. I love the fact that wine tours, some of the small cruising that's going on through the Thousand Islands, absolutely showing those images, but make sure and I don't, not saying you're not doing it, but it's very important to show images that show the new reality. In some cases, I've been looking at some of our clients and they're continuing to show the images that from a year ago where there's people and they're crowded together and there's no masks being worn. And that could be misleading to some of your guests that are looking to book, because again, they want to see that there's measures in place that are going to protect them. The magic question, rebooking, cancellations, refunds, critical right now, and a lot of our clients are going back and reviewing their policies. This again was an education for a lot of guests who were making those investments in a trip, holding their space, not understanding that most of that funding was going into preparing for the season ahead to take care of them when they arrived. So when they decided they weren't coming, or the COVID decided that no one was traveling, they wanted that money back immediately, and were quite shocked to understand that it wasn't readily available. So a lot of thought is now ensuring that people are aware of what this means. I saw that quite a few of the websites that Lori shared with me had updated policies around booking and rebooking and cancellations, which is great. I think, again, this is our opportunity to educate the responsible consumer that understands what it means for them to hold space, to protect that space for when they arrive, versus putting a deposit that's immediately going to come back if they decide that they can't come, or the world decides that they can't travel. In this time of recovery, we're having these tough conversations. It's been very disheartening, and it's not in our nature to say no to a guest. So it has been disheartening, but we have found that in the typical 20-60-20 rule in communications applies, in that you're going to have 20% of your clients that absolutely adore you, they get it, they're world travelers, they understand, and they're going to rebook for another time. They understand this is a global pandemic. You're going to have 20% who don't care. They're going to fight you every inch of the way, and they're going to be the ones that drag you down. And it's the 60% that we don't want to forget, where you need to communicate to more and more, and you need to keep in touch with. That's the opportunity where you need to put them to that positive 20% that understand that you're doing the best that you can do in order. We're in a situation here with a client that has it's a boutique cruise through the Great Bear Rainforest and up through the Inside Passage, and Transportation Canada, they can't get clear guidelines, so they're not able to say whether or not they're going, but because they can't, the government isn't definitively saying no in some respects, the cancellation insurance isn't kicking in. It's a real catch-22, but they're being very open and honest about it, and they're sending regular information out to their guests. And as much as guests are also expressing frustration, they're also expressing understanding and appreciation that they have been in constant contact. And that's where you don't be afraid to ask for patience, and you'll be surprised how much you get it. Some of the things that, and again, I'm seeing that you guys are doing this, so preaching to the convert a little bit, but this is something that maybe you want to highlight a bit more now in your communications, because these are some of the questions that perhaps didn't seem as important pre-COVID. Is, if I come and visit you, is it remote? Is it something that I can make sure that I have that space for physical distancing? And if I don't, how are you managing that? And is there medical attention close by? We have quite a few remote wilderness experiences across Canada, as in some of your areas as well. If something were to happen, if I felt unwell, or if someone needed to be evacuated quickly, how does that happen? Those are questions we're getting. No brainer, you guys are doing it. How have you increased your cleaning standards? Again, you're all doing it, which is great. Pointing to your experts, pointing to your guidelines that you're getting. Hotel Association, the Restaurant Association, Tourism HR Canada just announced tourismrecovery.ca toolkit. Point to those experts that you're using. The level of service, again, how is it going to change? And if it isn't going to change, explain to me how it isn't going to change. Some places are mandatory masks. Those are sort of things I want to know that before I arrive, what the expectations are. I also want to know, what is your mandate if somebody decides they don't want to follow your health and safety precautions? And that's a big question that's coming up. I trust myself, I trust my family, but what if somebody comes that doesn't want to adhere to your health and safety standards? What are you going to do about it? Again, a difficult conversation, but most of the language that I'm seeing on websites is quite strong. Please do not come if you do not wish to follow any of these. I think about it I think back to the high adventure, the more risk adventure activities where you're rafting, heli skiing. You're pretty clear that if you don't follow what we have to say, that you won't be participating. And I think that's sort of where we need to go here right now. That's building trust that you're taking it seriously, and I will then take it seriously too. We're in this together. It's a great message. We're seeing that. We're going to learn together. And again, what kind of activities will I have to leave and go off property where it may not be as they may not be as health and safety conscious? And that's where we're seeing, and I think Canada is a step ahead of a lot of destinations. We're seeing that everyone is coming together and collaborating together because they know that just as much control you have over your own experience, your regional experience, your transportation partners, if there's one bad step, it can affect someone's journey along the way and have concerns. If you think of where I am on Victoria and Vancouver Island, getting here is half the battle, right? So what are the float planes doing? What's BC Ferries doing? And again, similar transportation. It's great that I can drive, you guys have a lot of drive market, which they can take care of themselves when they're in their car. Nice to hear that Via Rail is one of the most trusted, I meant to mention that Via Rail is one of the most trusted brands in Canada for transportation. So communicate what they're doing. So if people want to take the train, here's what they can expect. Again, as I mentioned, I'm pointing to these trusted resources. These are all available for you. And again, if you haven't had a chance to look at the Tourism HR Canada Toolkit, a local company, Alphabet Creative, worked on this as well, and we helped with the PR. It's one where they're inviting collaboration. If you go through the toolkit and there's something missing, please let them know. They're going to add to it as well. It's going to be a living, breathing document or website. It's free. The great news is these tools are free. It's in everyone's best interest to get everyone as educated and informed as possible when it comes to this. One that you may not be as aware of as we are on the West Coast, because they're based out of Seattle, but they are a global association, is the Travel Trade Association. And again, many of your experiences are considered that travel or that venture. What they have done is they launched a program free, partnering thanks to a number of destinations that have sponsored, as well as G Adventures and Backroads. And they worked with the Cleveland Clinic. We have one in Toronto and big in the States. Many of the doctors were adventurers, so they gladly added their expertise, and they actually niched it down. So they looked at everything from trekking to rafting to biking, knowing that the way those experiences are delivered, and I know boating, small expedition cruising, things where space may be an issue, or transporting people may be an issue, or wearing a mask in some of these may be an issue. So they are looking at these with a bit of a focus lens, and coming up with these guidelines in order to help share those with people in the industry, and available on their website, and they're going to be updating those as well, I think, coming up. So they'll keep, if there isn't, and again, they're also open to feedback. So if there's something in there that a particular adventure experience that you're interested in knowing about, let them know, and they will look at it as well, and see what they can do for you. So that's the good news, right? We're all coming together to inform the industry, because again, I think the tourism industry globally knows that we need to get out of this together, and we need to build trust together so that people feel really comfortable coming back to travel. And through All Destination Canada's research, the good news is we're showing that people want to travel again. They, over the years, they really feel strongly that it's something that they don't want to give up, but they do want to ensure that if it's done safely. And so that's important. Some examples of things that I've recently worked with is, Horn Lake Caves. You would imagine that, as they did, that caving would have thought of being in a closed space, so something that may have been more difficult for people to have an experience. But when they opened up and let people know, and they were very good about communicating because they were getting requests, they did get quite a few. The first day, I think they had almost 60 people go through, which to them was huge. It's not as big as the numbers that they normally have, of course, but they were really pleased, and they found that people felt that they felt caves being underground, not open to the masses. So some of these adventure experiences was one of the reasons why, I think you'll see, and I've got some slides later that talk about the fact that adventure and remote tourism is going to be the first to bounce back. So they had on their front page, they have a COVID update right away. They had, highlighted, and they put a date to their updates so that people could see that this was kept up to date regularly. They talk about the fact that they are working with their trusted industry experts. Don't be afraid to quote them. And I think that has been something that's really helped them to continue to get visitors coming. They started to, I have to double check, but I've been cautioning them not to show a lot of photos with people not social distance, or show how they're working that way. Of course, in the cave, a little bit difficult. So they've talked about using the pin lights so that people can see how far away people are. Wearing a mask, difficult. They've learned along the way that if you're a glass wearer, that you're better to use contacts because your glasses will fog up. Again, everything working together, but an example of what they've done. Another one is Eagle Wing Tours opening up and going, and I really liked very upfront, a little bit of selling there, 30% off your next tour, but they have a safety pledge. And there, if you go into their website too, you'll see that they have very strong language about their expectation that there is a responsibility of the traveler to also keep themselves and those around them safe as well. So be respectful of what's being asked of them, and wearing their mask, and when appropriate, the social distancing that's being put in place. So I'm seeing this strong upfront messaging around what your experience is going to be like. And it's typical in adventure travel that there are a tendency to put that strong language in the background. This might be a good time, but that's changed now. Everybody wants to know, what are your safety protocols? What's your health and safety protocols? I want to read about them and know that you're taking this seriously. One of the things that came up in a webinar I did with ATTA recently was waivers, whether or not you need to update your waivers. And most waivers have a health and safety aspect to them. Again, something to talk to your lawyer about, of course, but something that was mentioned as well, that there is a presumed risk, right? An assumed risk when you're taking these activities. and that at this point, it would be safe to say that you assume the risk that when you're traveling, that you may come into contact with COVID. So as an operator, it's really worth looking at this. ATTA will have, the Adventure Travel Trade Association should have some updated information on this. And again, reach out to me and I can find it for you or put you in touch. They are talking to the insurance companies as well to talk about this, but that is a question that's been coming up, is people wondering about whether or not they need to update their waivers around this. And if some of you already have and had that information, please share it with us. It's a bit of a moving target. Again, touching on trust. So this is, you want to welcome feedback and provide appropriate, reasons why things are working and not working. So don't be, it's not a time to be defensive if someone is raised a concern. They want to know that they're being listened to. A lot of questions about sustainability these days because of the fact that people are wondering if sustainability is now taking a back seat because, again, not being able to use your reusable coffee cup, things like that. And that is, we're seeing some pushback from people, especially the type of travelers that want to, love the wilderness, love wildlife, love the great outdoors. They are very sensitive about protecting it. So again, continue to talk about what you're doing from a sustainable perspective. When you have to give up those measures because of safety and health, let the people know why. Taking a stance on social issues is really important because it is about ensuring that you are respectful of your rural communities, this resident and visitor interface. That is something that is, something that we're talking about a lot out west as tourism opens up, and I hear about it across the country. When I work with Destination Canada, you want to make sure that that you're not being tone deaf to that. That there are some concerns that some communities have about letting visitors in, and we want to make sure that we're respectful of that, and we also want to make sure that we're taking care of our employees as well. As you saw in that trust index, that's really important. Employee treatment fuels brand trust, and we want to know that they're taken care of. It's interesting to see some of the measures that were put in place to honor and support frontline workers when they're starting to be pulled back. There's some backlash happening. So, and if mistakes will happen, this is something new for all of us. It's why they happen and what's going to change again. It's, we haven't, I haven't heard of anything where people have had to do sort of a course correct yet. It's a little bit early, but I know that in the past, we've seen some brands make mistakes. Inclusivity, diversity and inclusivity is a big one right now. Recent stories about how people are being treated, and the measures that companies are doing in order to correct that's really important. So again, when it comes to COVID and health and safety, if someone feels that there was a misstep, acknowledge it and explain how it's going to be corrected so it won't happen again. Again, pretty straightforward, but something to remember, not to be afraid to talk about it. So launching straight through this, resilience is about building reserves. And this is the next, big word that you're hearing over and over again. It's about resiliency. And again, when it came to the wildfires that we're experiencing in Western Canada, resiliency was about how are we going to ensure and that there's those danger zones are cleaned up, that companies and businesses have the tools in place and the support they need, that should wildfires come through, that they know how to evacuate properly, all those things. So what is your resiliency plan? And again, this is that collaboration that I'm talking about. The DMOs, your RTOs, they're all Brand Ontario, they're all working together. And this is where it becomes really important because, when we start visitors, when they're coming, we're looking at the regions, right? We're looking at how well is Ontario, Quebec, BC, Alberta, how well are, Manitoba, how well are they managing this? Are we going to a region, whether or not the city within that region might be doing really well, or the town might be an amazing town with COVID, but is the rest of the region, because I have to go through it, or I have to access it, or people are coming from that region into where I'm going. So this is why it's so vital that we're seen to be talking as a province, as a brand, as a national brand. That the changes that you're making as a business, the training, all those things we talked about as well, that's really, really important. This is only going to make you stronger. And, creativity and innovation will be game changers. So Lori and I were talking, and we were saying that we would love to hear about some of the ideas you've come up with, changes that you've had to make, that you decided, wow, this actually might make the experience better because we've done this. And again, there are things that we've been hearing about as people understanding. Is there such a thing as a COVID fee? We've had to charge a little bit more because we have, fewer seats at the restaurant. And if you are charging that, I don't think people are necessarily against it, but they want to know about it. It should never be a surprise. It should be an understanding. And where are you investing that money back into? We had that with sustainability fees in the past, and a lot of businesses were very successful with them, but they had to be held accountable and they had to report back on where that was. So just keep that in mind. But some are coming up with new ways to experience their destination. And that's some of the things, some examples of that. For example, the Empress announced that they're doing picnics, and that's been the buzz around Vancouver, Victoria, is that the fact that you'll be able to be on the front lawn, something that was never, I used to be the PR director for the Empress for many years, and my gardener was my best friend. But if I ever said I would do picnics on the front lawns, he would not have been a happy camper. But now it makes sense, right? Gives them lots of space, opportunity to be on a iconic property, have these picnics. We've talked to a couple of the wellness and spa experience providers who realized that they had quite a lot of land in their area, so they're making them into meditative gardens and spacing out special places to sit and meditate, and something that they necessarily didn't think was necessary before, but now realize that that wide open space could actually do something and support them building their business back up in that trust. So that was really important as far as innovation. And we've heard a lot about safecations. That's the new buzzwords, staycations and safecations. So people, again, I'm sort of preaching to not telling you something that you don't already know, but that safety first is really what people are looking at. So if I'm going to these remote areas kind of makes sense. Rural tourism, it's going to be something that's going to be a little bit safer for me, something I can drive to so that I'm in charge of my own transportation method. That's going to be critical. And then seeing a lot of talk about adventure travel, because again, it's viewed as something that you're done in a smaller group, and how you're able to do it. Recently talked to someone who's doing agritourism, and working with some of the bigger buses that used to be full because the cruise ship industry was busy. Now they're actually working with them to get a larger bus at a good cost so that they can space people out within the bus when they're traveling from farm to farm. Again, that collaborative, co-opetition, we call it, is coming together to help ensure that the experience is a good one. And then so just wrapping up, I ran through a lot of things, but I hopefully touched on a few things that you thought, aha, that's good advice for us to use. I guess parting words are, we are from a brand. Canada has a very strong brand image out there, and it's an opportunity for Canadians to really embrace their backyard, which we have been trying to do as Destination Canada wasn't our mandate, but I think it's a good reminder to all of us that there's so much out there that we're seeing. We are seeing good news that we are seeing a lot of people that were planning on investing in maybe an international trip. They're investing back in Canada. That shop local, invest local message seems to be resonating. And so again, reinforcing, that's that value-based trust that I was telling you about, reinforcing how your business is supporting the local community with using other suppliers, farm products, things like that. That's really resonating for people. They do want to know that if they're spending their money, that it's actually staying local and it's actually supporting and then helping bring the tourism industry back. So Lori, I think I'll leave it there and see if there was any questions as I ran through all of that and see if I can answer some of those questions.
Terrific. Thank you very much. There aren't questions in the queue yet, but I certainly have some that have come up as I was listening to you go through your presentation. A question, one of the questions I think if I were an operator, I would have is how do I handle negative social media?
Absolutely. So, I mean, definitely social media it needs to be watched, which is great that you're paying attention, because that's where people do tend to get angry, and they go online, and if you don't respond to it, it seemed to be a little bit tone deaf. I think you can acknowledge it, the fact that somebody may have a concern. Again, if you can take it offline, if you can ask someone to please contact me directly, I'm happy to talk to you more about this. It's good to always circle back too. So if someone points out that there was a problem, that something that was, misinformation, or that they didn't get their money back, or they, and you are able to resolve that offline. I don't, obviously it doesn't make sense to go online and create that argument online. But then circle back and ask, either they can post it. We had a situation with a wedding venue when weddings were canceled, where the person took it to the media, took it to social media, a lot of negative comments. And the first reaction was to sort of pull back and not say anything and not want to get into it. But they actually wrote a beautiful, well thought out letter explaining why they weren't able to provide the money immediately, and that the contract, as they had signed it, had actually clearly pointed out that this money was not held in trust, that it was something to hold, and that if they were not able to cancel within a certain period, not in a prescriptive way, but they said it in such a way that helped people to understand. And they actually got a lot of support for that, because they clearly explained the misunderstanding. And sometimes if you can't take it offline, you may have to respond. And I think it's like TripAdvisor, right? I mean, we often say it's the response that's as powerful as the comment. So if someone responds and says, I'm sorry that that experience happened, here's what we're doing to change it, or, that's what many guests look at to see that you're paying attention. Can you block? There's trolls out there for sure. Can you block them? We don't encourage it, but sometimes you might have to. If they're just in there and they just want to be negative and ruining your business, that is something that sometimes you have to take a harder stance.
Right, right. And I think, you mentioned the importance of actually responding when you can. And if it requires a deeper conversation, taking it offline, pardon me, but I think it's really important that if somebody has a legitimate concern, and legitimate, with quotation marks around it, because perception is reality. So they view it as legitimate, whether you do or not. As business owner, I think it's really important that you address that online with them in some way, shape, or form, whether you take it offline, as you mentioned, or address it right there. I think it's really important. You talk about values-based trusts and how to communicate this so people understand. Um, uh, how we communicate with people has become even more important coming through
Mhm.
COVID, so they understand in a detailed way exactly what we're doing as a business, exactly what you're doing in health and safety, exactly. And where before we might keep some of this in behind the counter and in the back room, now it's more important than ever, I think, Deirdre, that it's something that we actually celebrate and bring out and let people know. You talked earlier as well about treating your staff well, how important that is, and how that helps to
Mhm.
build your brand image and your trust. When people know that you are first and foremost concerned with your staff and their safety, that not only will that let them know that it's kind of internal in the within the four walls of your business, but that then is going to be sort of parlayed and relayed to customers by your staff. And that's, it's that 360-degree approach to making sure things are taken care of and addressed.
I
um,
know. One of the things we're saying is, like, more than ever, I mean, that word of mouth, friend of mine awareness, we call it, is so important, particularly as we go after the domestic market. I mean, what do we all do? I'm heading to, Kingston, or I'm going to, Ottawa. Where should what do you recommend? Oh, you need to do XYZ. So you do tend to rely on your friends for the recommendations. And a friend of mine works at so and so and they love it, or all those kind of things are so important when you build your reputation up. And so I think it is really, and talking about, like, some people say to me, well, how do I communicate my values, what I stand for? And again, it's you can look at it and say about us, that what's your why? We all know Simon Sinek. What's your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why you love it? Why how important it has been for you to work with the industry when you come up with your health and safety guidelines. And a simple way of communicating them is doing you may have seen when I put up the Horn Lake Caves, they did a specific FAQ. They had an FAQ in general for their experience, but they did a specific FAQ for COVID. And it was, how will questions like, how will the experience change now with COVID? Do I need to wear, like, simple, do I need to wear a mask? Should I be wearing gloves? What if I don't bring a mask? Will there be, so just think of all the questions people ask and just keep the questions and answers very simple, straightforward, but having that available to people and allowing people to self-educate, it gives them a sense of confidence that you've thought through everything. And then opening up the line of questions. If you have any more questions, please come to us directly. But that FAQ has become quite an important tool for people, for many of our clients that are opening up.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to, I'm still surprised when I go online looking for a specific business and I see on their website or their social media page, there's nothing about COVID, or it's a tiny little line up in the corner. This is a pretty big thing that we're going through. So I would say don't bury it somewhere. Make sure it is front and center on
Absolutely.
your on all of your social media, so people don't have to go digging for it. Because if you don't have anything, people assume that you haven't changed your procedure and how your health and safety standards. So, and if they can't readily access that information, then they're just going to go elsewhere.
Well, and the other thing that to keep in mind too is make sure it's clear you're open, because what we're hearing in the news is the concern that many tourism businesses cannot afford to reopen. So and if you don't have anything about COVID and you're not necessarily showing up front that you are open, people may make the quick assumption, oh, they didn't reopen. So make sure it's very, very clear as soon as people on your Facebook and on all your social platforms that you are open for business.
Mhm.
If you are, and if you're not, let them know that we're closed right now. When are you thinking of reopening? Because in some cases, like I mentioned, some of the boutique cruises and things, they don't have the answers they need. They may be booking for 2021, and now is the time that people are looking at 2021. So don't, keep in your normal cycle of doing business, keep that cycle moving, because people are still booking for 2021. They may have put everything on hold this year. And then many of the clients that we have and across Canada that I'm hearing, the signature experiences and others that are often sold out at this time of year, are letting people know we're not. So this is your time. If you've dreamed of coming to see us, or it's always too busy, Prince Edward County, it's too busy this time of year, now's the time to book it. So letting that good, useful information I was mentioning about is when is the best time to come. And I've noticed that with some of the wineries we've been seeing, they've actually started putting the days of the week that they started, because again, they have fewer tables or fewer tasting rooms for tastings, or not as many tastings. So they're letting people know that if you are thinking of coming, these are the days that often are not as busy as others. So giving that good, useful information is great.
That's brilliant. I was speaking with someone from the county actually about a week and a half ago, and they indicated that one of the wineries actually had a takeaway box of wine tasting, and it was takeaway into the field.
Oh yeah.
But they didn't actually have to come in, so they had tables and chairs set up into the field, which was lovely. And you paid $20, and you got 2 little plastic wine glasses, 4 little bottles of wine, and a few snacks, and you got to go sit in a beautiful field of a winery and enjoy that. I mean, what a great workaround to having someone come into the actual tasting room.
Yeah, I love that. And again, that's something that they probably won't go away. If we get everything we need, like the vaccine and everything, people will probably go, that's a great idea. I still want to do that, like picnics on
Yeah.
the lawn. So that innovation and the creativity is really what's going to help these businesses
Yeah.
sustain
And
and
I
be
think
resilient.
we talked earlier, I think we're going to come out of this with some really new and unique ways of doing business, and ways that maybe people had thought of before, but and wanted to implement but never got the opportunity. And then when COVID hit, of course, they got thrown into it, and hopefully has turned out to be a good thing. But
Yeah.
you've been a great resource. I think, the big takeaway from this for me, and I hope for those that attended, is that it's all about communication. You can't not communicate what you're doing, because then the general public think it's a big secret. So make sure that you're paying attention, make sure that you're watching your social media regularly. If you're open, make sure you plaster all over your social media and your website that you're open. If it's Facebook, every day you need to do that, because people don't go looking through posts to find the one that says, yes, we're open now. So every day,
Mhm.
post that, or post your hours wherever it is, and then don't be afraid to make mistakes. We're going to have people out there who challenge us on a daily basis, particularly around the wearing of masks. Some people feel that it's still more of something to protect them instead of others, or others instead of them, depending on how they're doing it. But certainly in the KFL&A area right now, Deirdre, there is a mask wearing mandate. If you're going out into public spaces, you have to have your mask on, into retail units, that sort of thing. So I think, for the most part, we're all behaving ourselves and doing well, but it only takes one. That one person who can go on social media and just lambaste your business or an experience they had to make it a real challenge. And if not managed properly, it can do long-lasting damage. So some great points from you. I really appreciate you jumping in today from the West Coast. We didn't get you out of bed too early,
Nope.
but your contact information is there if anyone,
Yeah.
pardon me, anyone needs to reach out.
And I should mention Nicole Meal is our director, Ontario and Eastern Canada. She's based in Toronto, and again, we're sort of fingers across Canada, and so we're sort of watching best practices. And I think the last thing I would say is share the love. This is not the time to be don't work in a silo. Share what others are doing, because the more people understand that the region that you're in is open and there's lots of experiences, the more it'll drive people and to your destination and help everyone. So it is time. So if you're doing busy on social media and you want to share what others are doing, that's a nice time to do that, because again, it shows that you're working collaboratively. And if you see someone do something great when it comes to something innovative around health and safety, share that.
Great advice.
Kudos to so and so, because it just it'll drive. They may see that and go great, and because you build up that rapport, which you love to see when you're coming to a destination.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I am seeing that quite a bit actually in social media. It's nice to see the partnerships that are being developed, and the sort of the old world neighborhood kind of business that disappeared for so long, to see that come back in. So that's terrific. But just to remind everyone again that this will be posted on our industry website, tourismtalk.ca. I'm going to say within 48 hours, because the gentleman that does that happens to be off today. But we will have it on there. And again, Deirdre, thank you so much for joining in on this. We really appreciate your expertise, and I have no doubt that we'll have more people that are looking to, PR companies such as yours to help them navigate the next phase, because we're certainly not through this yet.
Great. Anytime. Thanks again.
Terrific. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a great day.